People used to tell me I was lucky, lucky to live in a house that looked like it belonged on the cover of a magazine. Lucky to be married to a man whose name carried weight in every room he entered. Lucky to never worry about money, about comfort, about the future. I believed them for a long time. Our $15 million home sat on a quiet hill, glass walls catching the sunrise every morning like a promise. From the outside it was flawless, from the inside it echoed. Large spaces have a way of amplifying loneliness, and I learned that silence can be louder than shouting. My husband used to come home early. We'd share dinners, talk about our days, laugh at nothing important. Somewhere along the way, those moments became rare, then optional, then non-existent. He started traveling more, or so he said. Business is demanding, he would tell me, loosening his tie without meeting my eyes. You know how it is. I did know how it was. I knew how his phone never left his hand, how he stepped outside to take calls that lasted too long, how he smiled at messages he never shared. I noticed the small things because small things are what remain when love starts leaving. At night, he slept beside me like a stranger borrowing space. I asked once, gently, if something was wrong. He laughed. You worry too much. That was the first lie I clearly heard. The rest followed quietly. Weeks passed, then months. The house stayed immaculate, but something rotten lived beneath the surface. I began to feel like a guest in my own life, careful not to disturb the man who once promised to protect it. The truth didn't arrive dramatically. No lipstick on a collar, no late night confession. It arrived in paperwork. I was organizing documents, one afternoon, deeds, insurance, contracts, trying to keep busy in a house that felt too big for one heart. That's when I noticed a folder tucked behind old financial files. It wasn't labeled. That alone was strange. Inside was a marriage certificate. Not mine. His name was there, printed clearly. So was hers. The date stared back at me like a cruel joke. 6 months ago. While I was planning anniversaries, he was planning a wedding. While I was waiting for him to come home, he was building another life. My hands didn't shake. My vision didn't blur. What I felt was colder. He hadn't just betrayed me. He had erased me. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, listening to the hum of appliances, wondering how someone could live two lives so effortlessly. I thought about all the nights he claimed exhaustion, all the times he told me I was imagining distance. I wondered how many people knew, how many smiles were shared at my expense. That night, he came home late again. Long day, he said, kissing my cheek like muscle memory. I smiled back. Inside, something shifted. Not anger, not grief, awareness. I understood then that love doesn't always end with tears. Sometimes it ends with clarity. With the realization that the person you trusted most never planned to be honest, only comfortable. As he went upstairs, I stayed behind, my eyes drifting toward the hallway where the study was. Toward the locked drawer, toward the life he thought I didn't understand. I didn't confront him, not yet. Because while he believed he was winning, I had just learned the rules of the game, and I was done being lucky. I didn't confront him the next morning. I poured his coffee the way I always did, 2 sugars, a splash of cream, while my hands remained steady. He spoke about a meeting downtown, about traffic, about things that no longer mattered. I listened, nodded, smiled at the right moments. If guilt lived inside him, it didn't show. That, more than anything, hardened something in me. Silence, I learned, unsettles liars far more than anger ever could. While he left the house each day wearing confidence like armor, I stayed behind and began dismantling the illusion he believed protected him. I moved through the rooms with new eyes, no longer as a wife trying to preserve a marriage, but as a woman preparing to reclaim herself. The first call I made was to a lawyer. I chose someone discreet, recommended quietly through people who understood power and privacy. I didn't cry during that meeting either. I spoke calmly, clearly, laying out facts instead of feelings. The lawyer listened, reviewed documents, and finally looked up at me with something close to respect. "The house," she said, tapping the file, "is entirely in your name." I already knew, but hearing it confirmed was like feeling solid ground beneath my feet after months of floating. He had insisted years ago that it made sense. For tax purposes, he'd said, "It's cleaner this way." What he meant was easier. Easier for him to forget that security, once given, could be taken back. Over the next weeks, I learned how much of my life he had underestimated. I met with financial advisors who spoke in numbers instead of sympathy. I learned what could be sold, what was protected, what belonged solely to me. Each conversation stitched me back together piece by piece. At home, I played my role flawlessly. I asked him about his day. I reminded him of appointments. I even laughed at his jokes, though they landed hollow. At night, I lay beside him listening to his breathing, marveling at how someone could be so close and yet so far removed from the truth. He grew more careless. Sometimes he left his phone face up on the counter, messages lighting the screen with her name. Sometimes he smelled unfamiliar perfume on his jacket. Each detail sharpened my resolve rather than my pain. I wasn't losing him. I had already lost him. What I was gaining was myself. The house, our house, became a symbol of everything he thought he controlled. Every marble surface, every glass panel, every piece of art we'd selected together. He believed those walls would always welcome him back, no matter what secrets he carried. I began preparing it for goodbye. A broker came by while he was traveling. I told neighbors we were considering downsizing. The staging happened quietly, tastefully, invisibly. I approved photos that showed the house at its most seductive, bathed in light, polished to perfection. At night, I stood alone in the living room, barefoot on cold stone floors, and allowed myself a single moment of grief. Not for him, but for the woman I used to be, the one who thought loyalty would protect her, the one who believed honesty was mutual. Then I let that woman go. By the time the first serious offers arrived, my heart had already hardened into something unbreakable. I wasn't plotting revenge fueled by rage. This wasn't about hurting him. This was about balance. He had taken years of my trust without permission. I was taking back what was legally, undeniably mine, and still he suspected nothing. He kissed my forehead one morning and said, "You've been quiet lately." I smiled softly. "Just tired." It was true. I was tired of pretending, and I was almost ready to end the lie he thought only he knew how to live. The day the house sold, the sky was impossibly clear. Sunlight poured through the glass walls, as if nothing monumental was about to happen. I signed the final documents at the dining table, where we once hosted lavish dinners, my pen gliding smoothly across pages that ended a chapter of my life without a single raised voice. "Congratulations," the broker said quietly. "The transfer is complete." I nodded, calm on the surface, steady beneath. The house no longer belonged to the man who believed it was his kingdom. It belonged to strangers, now people who would fill it with their own stories, unaware of the silence it once held. I asked for discretion until evening. He was due home at 6. The movers arrived at 4. They moved efficiently, professionally, unaware they were carrying away more than furniture. They were dismantling his certainty. His suits disappeared from the closet first, then the watches. The artwork he bragged about, everything he believed proved his success was wrapped and labeled like inventory. I watched from the doorway, hands folded, breathing evenly. At precisely 6:12 p.m., his car pulled into the driveway. The front door opened to chaos. "What the hell is going on?" he shouted, his voice echoing through the emptied halls. I didn't rush to explain. I let him see at first the bare walls, the half-empty rooms, the strangers moving through what he still believed was his domain. Confusion crossed his face, followed quickly by anger. "Who authorized this?" he demanded. "I did." I said, stepping forward. He turned to me sharply, disbelief etched into every line of his face. "You can't just. This is our house." I met his eyes, steady and unflinching. It was. His phone buzzed in his hand. I recognized the name on the screen before he turned it away. Panic flickered there now, raw and unmasked. "What did you do?" he asked, lowering his voice as if volume could restore control. "I sold it." The words landed hard. For a moment he laughed. A sharp, disbelieving sound. "That's not funny. I'm not joking." The color drained from his face. "You don't have the authority." I reached into the folder I'd been carrying and handed him a copy of the deed. He flipped through it frantically, as if speed might change reality. Only my name stared back at him. "No," he whispered, then louder, "No, no, no. You did this behind my back." I tilted my head slightly. "The same way you married her behind mine." Silence fell like a dropped glass. His jaw tightened. "You went through my things. You went through my life," I replied calmly. At that moment, the front door opened again. She stood there, his wife, eyes wide, heels clicking nervously against the floor. Her gaze darted around the room, then landed on him. "What's happening?" she asked. He said nothing. I looked at her then, really looked. She wasn't triumphant. She wasn't confident. She was afraid. "This house is sold," I said to her gently. "You'll need to leave." Her mouth opened, then closed. "But he said many things." I interrupted softly. That's when he broke. His voice rose, cracking as years of entitlement unraveled. He shouted about betrayal, about cruelty, about how I was destroying him. His hands shook. His control evaporated in front of everyone. I didn't raise my voice. I watched. Because the scream he let out, raw, furious, helpless, was the sound of a man realizing that power only works when no one questions it. And for the first time, I wasn't the one losing everything. I was the one walking away whole. I didn't stay to watch them leave. Some endings don't need witnesses, only closure. While the movers finished their work and the new owners prepared to arrive the next morning, I packed a single suitcase, only what I needed, nothing that carried his weight. The house was no longer mine, but the life ahead of me was. I walked through each room one last time, my footsteps soft against the floor. The echoes felt different now, lighter, as if the walls themselves were relieved to let go of a story that had gone on too long. I paused by the front door, glanced back, and felt no urge to cry. Freedom rarely arrives loudly. It arrived quietly, wrapped in final signatures and calm resolve. By the time the news reached him fully, I was already gone. The money from the sale was secured, transferred cleanly into accounts he could never touch. Lawyers handled the aftermath, his frantic calls, his threats, his sudden promises. I didn't answer a single one. He tried everything. He accused me of being heartless. He begged. He blamed her. He blamed me, but none of it mattered anymore. Without the house, his image cracked. The friends who admired his success grew distant when the illusion faded. The connections he relied on began to question his stability. Wealth, I learned, is only impressive when it appears effortless. And now it didn't. As for her, reality arrived even faster. She had married a man who promised security and delivered chaos. No mansion, no status, no future she'd imagined. She reached out once, an apologetic message filled with confusion and regret. I didn't respond. Some lessons aren't meant to be softened. I moved into a place of my own, not extravagant, but peaceful. Sunlight poured in through open windows. I cooked when I wanted, slept deeply, laughed without restraint. I rediscovered small joys I'd forgotten while trying to preserve a marriage built on deception. Revenge, I realized, isn't about destruction. It's about detachment. I didn't ruin him. I simply stepped aside and let truth do the work. I took what was legally mine and walked forward without dragging his shadow behind me. One evening, weeks later, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights glow. My phone buzzed once more. His name appeared on the screen. I deleted the contact. That was the final act. No confrontation, no forgiveness speech. No dramatic farewell, just silence. Chosen this time, the world didn't collapse, my life didn't end. In fact, it expanded in ways I never imagined while living under his quiet control. I had space now, for dreams, for plans, for a future that belonged solely to me. People still tell me I'm lucky. This time I agree, not because of money, not because of revenge, but because I learned that betrayal doesn't have to break you. Sometimes it frees you, and sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply walking away with everything that truly mattered: your dignity, your peace, and your power.